think we'll come to order, folks, please, if you could find your seat. We have Minister Bennett with us today and to talk about the Supplementary Estimates A 2016-2017. I just would raise with members that we have about maybe 15 minutes of committee business to conduct at the end of the meeting. And to make sure that we have time for that, given our late start because of votes, I'd like to propose that we just do one complete order of questions at the end of the minister's presentation, and then proceed from there after a short suspend right into committee business. Is there consent for that? Okay, looks good. Okay. Minister Bennett, well, thank you very much for being with us today. And the minister is joined today by Hélène Laurendeau, the Deputy Minister of the Department of Indian Affairs and Northern Development, as well as Chief Financial Officer Paul Thoppel. We're very pleased to have you here today, and you may recall that we'll give you 10 minutes, Minister, and when there's about a minute left, I'll wave a yellow card and then a red card when we're at 10. And with that, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you again, and it's a pleasure once again to join you here on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people, and we're also pleased to have Mr. Urdiga here with us, in that we missed you last time, and we hope that everything is progressing in your territory. So, comme le président a dit, notre sous-ministre.
Like the chair said, I'm joined today by our Deputy Minister, Hélène Laurendeau, and our Chief Financial Officer, Paul Thoppel.
We want to thank the committee for your work to date. Particularly for the ongoing study on suicide among Indigenous people and communities. I am pleased to let you know that the Parliamentary Secretary will be traveling to Nunatsiavut in July to be with ITK as they release their youth suicide strategy. As you know, we feel that we're beginning to address this crisis in the urgent way, but I know that your work will enhance and inform the government's response to the ongoing tragedy. And as you know, from my point of view as the Minister of Social Determinants of Health, that our job is the prevention part and the hope. So here we go again. We're here to discuss the Supplementary Estimates A for Indigenous and Northern Affairs. And as I referenced last time, we are more than aware that the current estimates process is arcane and that it is particularly challenging for this committee to do the essential job of holding the government to account for proposed spending. As we all know, the President of Treasury Board has been clear in his commitment to work on this problem so that the government can provide Parliament with more timely and accurate information.
In the meantime, I'm happy for this opportunity to be here to answer your questions and provide you with as much information as possible so that you can do your jobs in an effective way.
So, as you can see, the estimates reflect a net increase of $1.2 billion in appropriations for our department, which brings the total appropriations for INAC for this 2016-17 to $8.8 billion. That funding, once approved, will target investments in many important areas, which I'll highlight later in my remarks and through your questions. I want to make clear, however, that these supplementary estimates are only the first of several, which will account for both the additional funding flowing through Budget 2016 and the new funding needs that will be identified throughout the year. So your scrutiny is paramount to this process, and as more of the budget and other new funding is reflected and approved, I look forward to returning for future estimates to ensure the full transparency. Ce premier budget supplémentaire des dépenses de l'exercice
These, the first supplementary estimates of the fiscal year, primarily reflect infrastructure stimulus as identified in Budget 2016.
However, I want to make clear upfront that just because budget commitments are not reflected in these estimates does not mean that no new money is flowing. where there are existing authorities, the department can accommodate new spending using existing funding in anticipation of future estimates being approved, because they were in the budget. This is the case for the remaining budget 2016 commitments not included in SUP-As. For instance, although in these estimates by July 1st, 2016, we have advanced $4.1 million of new funding from budget 2016 to the recipients for the existing network of 41 emergency shelters for victims of violence. So that money is flowing even though you don't see it in SUP-As. Also, in anticipation of future estimates, we have advanced approximately $28.4 million to First Nations Child and Family Services programs providers for the initiatives like the enhanced prevention approach that we know is working, and we've been able to put it into the provinces and territories that didn't previously have it. So we have no doubt that some of your questions will not only be about these estimates, but what's not in them. J'aimerais toutefois utiliser le reste du temps.
I would, however, like to use the rest of my time today to highlight some of the key initiatives that are included in these estimates.
The $1.2 billion of funding sought in these SUPs is primarily for investments in water, wastewater, waste management, affordable housing and social infrastructure, education infrastructure, and settlement of outstanding claims. As we have discussed here before, all Canadians expect access to safe, clean, and reliable drinking water, and First Nations should expect no less. And frankly, that is one of the most well-received parts of the Minister of Finance's speeches, that everybody gets this. So through these estimates, INAC will access the $308.5 million to support First Nations in the operation, maintenance and construction of water and wastewater facilities, as well as wastewater management infrastructure. And so the 1.8 over 5 years is earmarked for these on-reserve and wastewater infrastructure, and is part of our commitment to end the boil water advisories on reserves within 5 years. Housing is also a fundamental need, and all Canadians should have access to a secure home. I think we've all been in those homes and on reserve, and the conditions are, quite frankly, a disgrace. Pour répondre aux besoins urgents en matière de logement dans les réserves.
To address urgent housing needs on reverse, Budget 2016 proposed to provide $554.3 million over 2 years.
Estimates, INAC will access $206.6 million to address the immediate and urgent housing needs on reserve and the renovation and retrofit of existing housing on reserve. Cultural and recreational infrastructure can provide an important focal point for community activities, contributing to social cohesion, and most importantly, a safe place for youth. And as you know, that wasn't previously funded. Cette infrastructure crée des liens entre les personnes et les familles.
This infrastructure connects individuals and families to their communities and contributes to the healthy development of young people.
These estimates will also provide $34.4 million of budget 2016. It's $76.9 million to support the construction of cultural and recreational infrastructure on reserve. Budget 2016 funding will also support investments in a range of complementary infrastructure needs like roads, bridges, energy systems, and broadband connectivity. Ce sont toutes des choses qui aideront les collectivités.
This will all help communities as they develop and grow, and this will also support significant improvements to the environment of quality of life of First Nation communities.
$104.3 million will be accessed to support the construction of public infrastructure on reserve. And we're also pleased to add that the additional $96.1 million will be accessed to support the First Nations Enhanced Education Infrastructure Fund and the building and refurbishing of First Nation schools. As you know, the amount for school infrastructure was actually twice what was in the platform, and that this was viewed as very urgent. That means safe and healthy places in which students can learn and achieve academic success, along with the funding for the maintenance of these facilities. Also pleased to say that the funding will also help reduce the environmental and human health risks posed by federal contaminated sites. Through these estimates, $199.9 million will be accessed for the assessment, management, and remediation of these sites, and this funding will contribute to the wide range of tools to reduce the risks, including treating contaminated water and soil and removing hazardous waste. And this has been a priority of the department when there's extra funds at the end of a year. This has been one of the ways we do it, and certainly when we heard this week from the chief of Attawapiskat that being able to rebuild on that place where the school burnt down has been very important, and that therefore becomes an urgent contaminated site for us to be able to progress with the progress in that community. So as you can see, there's many other important investments as well, including the waste disposal claims and negotiations, funding for northern priorities like housing and the Canadian High Arctic Research Station. The funding will contribute to a more prosperous Canada and significantly contribute to closing the social and economic gaps for First Nations, Inuit and Métis and Northerners. Ce budget supplémentaire n'est toutefois.
But these estimates represent just a beginning.
Forward to taking your questions today, as well as returning for future estimate appearances. Thank you. Merci, Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Minister. We'll move quickly into the 7-minute questions, and the first question to you is from Mike Bossio, please.
Thank you very much once again, Minister, for taking the time to come to our committee and answer our questions. We're appreciative of the fact that you have done this a number of times now, and it is great to see that commitment. So you mentioned in your opening remarks that not all of the budget 2016 commitments are in there in the estimates. Can you expand on how the government is planning to deliver on the budget without putting commitments in the estimates?
Absolutely. So in order for us to move forward on all of the initiatives in budget 2016 as planned and without delay, even though not all are contained in the SUPs, the initiatives, the government prioritized the initiatives that were considered stimulus funding and shovel ready. So those were prioritized and they're being accessed in SUP A. So the department will then prioritize the remaining initiatives to move forward in the future estimates. So we believe that things that aren't there are proceeding and flowing as required without impeding the program delivery because we can cash manage it. And so we already, in the areas where we already had authorities. So it means that we have the internal flexibility within the department to advance those funds. And then when we come back for the SUPs, then Finance reimburses our department for what we advanced. And so that's the cash management of how we don't interrupt, but we have to go after the things that we felt were stimulus. And I just give you two examples. One was the one that we said in the remarks was we already had authority for emergency shelters. So we've advanced 4.1 of the new funding to the recipients for the existing network of emergency shelters, but we would have to come back for authority to do the new shelters. So because we already had that, and so the other is that we already had advanced the 28.4 to First Nations Child and Family Services providers in the initiatives like the Enhanced Prevention Program. So that was already in some provinces, but not in BC, the Yukon, Ontario, New Brunswick, or Newfoundland. So what we've been able to do is advance that money on enhanced prevention, that we know that's what we need to do in order to prevent children from having to be apprehended.
Great, thank you, Minister. Now we've talked in past about in the estimates I was showing that a lot of it is grant and contribution based rather than ongoing long-term stable funding that enables the Indigenous communities to establish their own priorities, their own criteria as to where the investments need to be made, and not to have the stringent ties that they have now defining how much is invested in what area. And there are some communities that have established that self-determination and that self-government. I know the department, when I spoke to them, said, oh yes, we're hoping that more can come on, but they're not ready yet. Is the department looking at, once again, to end those paternalistic ties, are we looking at moving forward with having those groups that have established self-government, use them to be the guides and to assist those that haven't got there yet and weren't ready yet to establish that?
It's a great question, and I think that we are trying more and more to use the self-government First Nations people in the Land Claims Coalition to be an example of how you can move forward in actual self-determination. So they are funded with a transfer, not these program spendings if you can spend it on this but not on this, and that kind of paternalistic approach. So in trying to establish a new fiscal approach, we obviously firstly want to urge more and more communities to get to that self-determination, self-government, and that's what we've talked about here before with Joe Wild and his much more flexible new approach to, if people want self-determination on education or fishery or those kinds of things, we can make an agreement with them on the parts, even if they don't feel quite ready to do a full treaty or full self-government. So we've taken quite a interesting approach to that. Regardless, we know we have to change the fiscal arrangement with all First Nations, meaning that stable, predictable, adequate funding so First Nations can plan like any other organization would be able to plan in not just 1 year at a time where they don't know whether the money's coming the next year or not. And it's impossible for people to plan, and that's the work we're doing with the Assembly of First Nations, but with again using the self-governing nations as an example.
Now, instead of just using them as an example, though, can we use them as helping to train those other Indigenous nations to become ready, to become self-sufficient, to become to reach that level of self-government where instead of the department doing it, and please don't take it the wrong way, but the bureaucrats doing it. I think it makes sense to have those who have gone through it themselves, been burned by the fire, so to speak, to lead then those other groups towards that ability.
Absolutely, and I think that you'll see that. That is happening informally, but I'd love a better way of doing that. As you know, some of the former chiefs are doing that kind of work, consulting other First Nations, but it would be excellent for more to move that way. And even some of the First Nations that are just successful but not yet self-governing are also helping with the governance and the priority setting of some of the more struggling ones. And we were quite keen to hear when we were in Labrador that Natwitshish has reached out to Conn River to help them again with setting their priorities and being able to move forward.
And I understand, of course, at the same time that
we're out of time there, Mike. Yeah. We're going to move along. The next question is from Kathy McLeod, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also to the Minister for joining us here again. First of all, I want to say up front that we do support the expenditures that are planned both in the budget and the supplementary estimates. Obviously, looking for ensuring effectiveness of every single dollar that's spent in terms of making a real difference in the lives of the communities. Where I want to focus my comments is regarding the comprehensive land claim area and the $44.2 million that's there. In British Columbia, of course, that is particularly important. And if you'll indulge me, I just want to take maybe 2 minutes of my time to sort of set the table for what I consider to be a significant concern that we have to deal with, and we have the, as I say, comprehensive land claim process in the subs. things started in, I think, good faith in the 90s, and there was engagement at a local level, and there was engagement, comprehensively with all the players, and somehow over the years we have drifted away from that in terms of communities. And I think, as our Chief Bellegarde indicated, National Chief Bellegarde, is we need peace in the nation at times. In the spring of this year, 58 of our ranchers were called in and were told that, this tenure, ranches are tenure, their leased land, their own land, essentially that due to a treaty settlement, significant components of their land was going to be removed. It was part of the Shuswap agreements. So we have 58 ranchers who were given maps with significant sections of land removed that cut off winter pasture for summer pasture. These ranchers are very much behind settling treaties, so there is nothing about them not being supportive of treaty settlement. But in actual fact, the impact is 17% of the caribou, the herd of the caribou, is going to be lost because of cutting off spring from pasture. There's very complicated formulas. So we have 58 ranchers who have probably gone from a marginal, an operation that made some money to an operation that made no money. So I guess another example is someone that owned a trap line. He was shut down. Again, he appreciates the need for settlement. Someone else had access to his property and said, well, we hope that you can negotiate, access to your property because his property was cut off. So their question that they want me to ask you is, they're looking, like we did with other organizations, like fishing licenses, the ability for compensation for significant business loss. In this case, it's the ranching community. So I know that the province is responsible for the land selections, but the province is saying the federal government's responsible for money, and if there's impact to third parties, they believe that the federal government should be at that table.
Thank you for the question, and I think that the last sentence is really important. This was Crown land. That when you said their land of the ranchers, it was land that the ranchers were using that was Crown land.
For 100 years.
And so, and I think that again, that on the caribou piece, everybody wants to protect the caribou. This is huge, and nobody more than First Nations.
Sorry, this is sort of the regional areas of caribou, but the tenure at times has been there for 100 plus years.
There's no question on these that people need to sit down and have a conversation. That land claims are never easy, and the issues of overlap happen. But again, that lots of First Nations would love the rent paid by farmers or ranchers, but it needs to be understood that in order to be able to settle these land claims, there is some land that's going to have to be parceled off and given as part of the land claim agreement. And so that's why, in terms of the BC Treaty Commission and the kinds of areas that we're trying to work, that we want to have those conversations, and I think that these are still good, ongoing, positive conversations that are happening.
So I guess my point, Minister, is there was win-wins for everyone, but the fact that there was not the conversation, the win-wins didn't happen, and what we now have is a significant impact. We're sort of repeating mistakes of the past by creating new mistakes. So I do think we need to look at the issue around third parties, and we need to look at the issue of how do we include people at the table during the negotiations so that perhaps the ranchers could give example after example in terms of had they been sitting at the table with their neighbors, they could have come up with better. Maybe we don't have to cut off my spring pasture. So that's sort of something that we need to.
I think that's what we're saying on even the UN Declaration. It is about getting people sitting down early to find the win-win, and I think you'll see in Manitoba or in other places where they need to move to higher ground. Often that's land that is occupied by ranchers, but there needs to be a conversation.
Okay. So I'll leave that with you, and I can give you some significant amounts later. On May 5th, you indicated the Friendship Centers do amazing work, at least in the community I
Kathy.
represent. They haven't got their money yet. They are laying off staff. It's an issue.
Today? Yeah, I agree with you. The Friendship Centers are doing amazing work, and I've been in a lot of them. Mr. Rodriguez riding in Prince George. This is, or no, who is that? Who, oh no, it's my friend, your other colleague. But this is hugely important work that they're doing, and we need them to keep doing it, and we probably need them to even do more in years of reconciliation and those kinds of things.
No money.
So the agreement is with the national body, and the discussions, the money's there. It just was that the national body needs to sign off. They needed to submit their work plan. We've now seen the work plan. I think we dealt with the work plan within 2 weeks, and it should be signed, and that money should be flowing, like within days. But we only got the work plan 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. Charlie Angus, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Madame Bennett. It's always a pleasure to have you at our committee. We really appreciate your engagement on this issue. I'm looking at the overall numbers that the department is putting out this year. So will you confirm that the money for base funding for programs will be 2% this year?
Base funding?
Yeah, the base funding for Indigenous Affairs for 2016-2017 is at 2% this year?
2%. Yeah, 2% of what?
Of a 2% increase.
Oh, it's way more than that. Yeah, maybe Paul will just go over.
Well, no, I just got this on an order paper question signed by you. So the average the increase for base funding, so this isn't discretionary funding, 1997, 1998, 2%, 99, 2%, 2000, let's just skip forward, 2008, 2008, 2009, 2%, 2015, 2%, 2016, 2017, 2% increase of base funding. So
Charlie, on, and Paul will carry this on, but in terms of the basic escalator, and then there's program funding that goes on top of it, which has been really seriously ramped up, right? So maybe Paul will explain how the base funding changes.
Well, I understand how base funding works. The issue is that the base funding has been capped at 2%. Discretionary funding never was. So, I mean, the previous government talked about record investments, but that's money that is announced. It's specific program funding, but the base funding has been capped at 2% per year. So it's still capped at 2%, correct?
No.
No, that's not true. We're in a transition period between what was the previous government's in 2%, and you will see through items such as education in a future SUP a ramp up in terms of escalators.
Okay, but education, again, that is program funding, base funding, because the Prime Minister said, as part of this, we will immediately lift the 2% cap on funding for First Nation programs. Budget 2016 said the government has committed to lift the 2% funding cap to establish a new fiscal relationship of sufficient, predictable, and sustainable funding, and yet out of this budget, the base funding is still at 2%.
Charlie, the 2% cap included program funding before. So all the money that's being ramped up now breaks way out of the 2%.
Well, I hear that, but I'm looking at what the government spent, this government spending on wastewater, and what the previous government spent on wastewater, and it looks to me they actually spent more on wastewater. So that is separate from the 2% cap. We're talking about the base funding is still at 2%. Why is it? Excuse me, with the population increase of 4.22% this year? Why is it the overall program funding in the base funding that goes into the communities is still at 2%? So the cap is still in place. You can have discretionary funding for all manner of things like the previous government spent on wastewater. They spent billions. The rest of the program funding was still 2%.
Charlie, this is the problem with estimates and what's in a budget. There is the 2% cap is gone, and there'll be a time lag until the next SUPs as to how this ramps up. So
From the
but I
supplements,
wouldn't-
this is from your
Charlie,
order paper
yeah.
question that shows that in 2016,
But you're
2017
talking
base
apples
funding. No, I'm talking apples to apples. 2% by 2% every single year of base funding. It's still 2%.
No, that, when we said we'd raise the cap, we said that we would raise the cap. And that means the project funding was also at 2% before. And so this is very different. And so I wouldn't waste your time on this because the 2% cap is gone.
Well, I don't know. I'm looking at 1995, 96. It was 6% increase for base funding. It was 3% in 1996, 97, and every single year the base funding has been clocked at 2%, which is for this year the base funding is still at 2%. So you can have discretionary funding. You can promise to put spending on special projects. Now that's money that gets announced in press releases. That's money that has a limited lifespan. But the base program funding, that was always the issue. That's what the national chief had said. The one thing to move communities forward is to get rid of that cap. So why on base funding is it still at 2% for 2016, 2017?
So there is a time lag between budget 2016 and what you will see in terms of escalators and the lifting of the cap in future estimates. And so what you haven't seen through supplementary estimates A, sir, is those escalators lifting the cap on education and other programs that you will see, sir, through future supplementary estimates. So we are in transition.
But the money's flowing.
And the money's flowing, notwithstanding that.
Well, yeah, I get that, but I'm looking at the order paper question when I asked what your base funding was for the year and what your planned spending for the year was for increases, and you sent to me just a few days ago that it was going to be 2% for this year. So
and that was based on the main estimates. And that's what that number is, which has not included the future escalators beyond the 2% in the future estimates. So what
in
you
the
got was a
sub-Bs,
snapshot.
will we find, if I ask again, we'll find that that 2% has moved to 4.22% or whatever else? Or will it remain the same?
The base funding is the base, it's the starter, but the cap used to be on everything, right? And so this is the base, this is what finance and Treasury Board do, and then we have to justify everything we spend.
Well, I get that, but again, like I'm looking at wastewater where the previous government spent billions, so that cap wasn't on wastewater. They actually put billions of dollars into wastewater. They put some money, they were putting the $1.9 billion into education, but the cap was still in place on base funding. So right now, 2016, 2017, the base funding that serves all the communities is at 2%. So is it going to be lifted? And when?
It's lifted now.
Well, not in what you gave me 2 days ago, so
No,
shall we have this conversation in a couple of months?
It's lifted. The 2% cap is not only talking, lifting the 2% cap isn't just talking, the cap was included everything. And we are lifting all of the program funding. We would like it to be that everything was in a base that was just a transfer to First Nations. That would be excellent. But at the moment, it's done on proposals, and there's the proposals we're funding are way above 2%.
Last government said, they said record funding, but they still had the cap in place.
We're out of time there,
Thank you.
Mr. Angus. Michael McLeod, please.
Thank you. Thank you to the Minister and her team for presenting today. It's been a real pleasure to see all the different initiatives moving forward, and I'm happy that some of these are being unrolled and presented to the Aboriginal population right across Canada, more specifically in the Northwest Territories. One of the concerns that we had throughout the last 10 years or so is the reductions in funding to the band councils. And I'm looking at your budget, but I don't know if it's in here. Maybe you could explain if we are planning or will be reinstating band council core funding to historic levels.
Just say again, on the ARO funding, the Aboriginal representative organizations?
I was talking about band council's fundings. No, I don't know what program it came from, but it was for core funding for band councils. They had been significantly reduced in the last government, and there had been discussion about reinstating, and I'm not sure if we have done that or plan to do that.
Yeah, do you want to, maybe Ellen will just explain how we do that?
We have increased the funding of we have increased the funding of bands based on the new needs. In terms of reinstating per se, we're in conversation with them to see what the needs are, and we're addressing the needs. But we have already amended a series of funding agreements to actually inject the new money, depending on various programs.
Okay, so if I go back to my communities in my riding and talk to them, they will have seen an increase in their core funding, or they should be seeing it, or they have seen it.
They will have seen increase in their funding, yes.
My next question, and I see there's money for land claims, and I'm very happy that some of the discussions have started up again, and there's been some real sincere and dedicated people around the table talking about land claims, but we're still working with a mandate that was set quite a while ago in the 1990s. I'm hoping that now that we're in 2016 and we have taken a different approach to Aboriginal people, Indigenous people, that we're going to look at revising that mandate or changing the mandate, or working on some type of policy that will help us move forward. We still have a number of large Aboriginal organized governments in the north that want to settle, but there's challenges when we're still working with a document from the 1990s.
And as you know, well, Michael, both the comprehensive land claims and the specific claims, they've been very criticized in terms of what the approach was, in terms of take it or leave it, you love it, don't you? And that's not the approach our government's taking. We're taking an approach of what will it take to get an agreement, and how, even though, Kathy hasn't had a positive situation in her riding, we are trying to work with all the stakeholders, including provinces and territories, to try and find the land that's required, the money that's required, and other more creative, innovative ways of getting to a claim. So it's I think it's exciting, and you've heard me say before that the Treaties and Aboriginal Government part of our department with Joe Wild, it's really I think leading to really positive approaches, where people who walked away from the table a long time ago thinking they were getting nowhere and this was a waste are now back at the table and really interested in pursuing a custom kind of agreement.
Mm-hmm. I've said it publicly a couple times, so I'm really keen to see this move forward, because I've indicated to my constituents that I'd like to see some of these resolved during my 4-year term. So I'm going to be really watching closely. We've been talking about the suicide across the Northwest Territories for some time now. We've had lots of presentations, and yet the concern continues. I've had 2 suicides in my riding since our study started. Nunavut has 2 suicide this week. In fact, one today or yesterday. And so this is still a real huge issue across the board, across Canada, in the Aboriginal communities. I'm looking for something in the budgets to try to meet some of the issues on the short term. And I find in our small communities, and I'm from one, there's a lot of communities that don't have any facilities. They don't have drop-in centers. They don't have restaurants, coffee shops. There is no place to gather. There is no cultural centers. And yet we have programs that haven't moved for a long time. Friendship centers could fill that role. Aboriginal Head Start could be very useful to deliver programs. We have junior ranger programs. We have cultural centers that are set up and have proven themselves under the Aboriginal or the urban Aboriginal strategy. I'm hoping that we're going to look at all the different pieces that are out there, regardless of what department they fall under, and try to see if we can find a mechanism, including facilities, infrastructure that's needed. I would love to see all these combined and presented and built in one in each isolated community. I think that would go a long way. But I think, first of all, we have to start talking about it.
As I'll go at it back to front. On the urban Aboriginal strategy, that's, we hope all of you will do a consultation in your communities as we go forward, because we know it's got to change. We've heard distinctly from the young people in Vancouver about the importance of culture and language even in downtown Vancouver. They want that. We've heard that even getting in urban kids out on the land and understanding to have those skills is really important. So we're working across all departments. I think Aboriginal Head Start obviously is still in the Public Health Agency or Health Canada, that we are, embarking on a whole of government strategy. I think that the Parliamentary Secretary plus the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Adam Vaughan, plus the Parliamentary Secretary to Heritage is going to go out and see what we can do in the consultations on the urban Aboriginal strategy, but in those remote communities, even more important, that language and culture, land-based programs, those kinds of recreation and cultural centers, but also other organizations like Right to Play and all of the other things that we know everybody's trying to help. And my personal thing would be to get some canoes and tents and paddles. If the South wants to know how they can help, then there's lots of things that the kids are asking for.
Thanks, Minister. Next question from David Udiga, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank the Minister for taking questions from us today. I mean, a lot of the questions are difficult to answer because it's such a broad spectrum. Budget 2016 proposes to invest about $2 billion over 5 years, specifically towards improving on-reserve water and wastewater. My first question is in reference to on-reserve potable water. Has a list of priority projects been established, and how many communities will see construction starts this year?
It's a great question, and I just have to tell you that this is the most fun I've had in the last 2 days, in that of all of the places that have asked or need, that we have a beautiful diagram with the ones where they're already being built and with a hammer, and the ones which at least they're in the planning phase, because some of these communities, it really takes a feasibility study. The places that really have no soil, what are we going to do? So I'm happy to share that with you, and I think you'll see that this came late breaking since the deck was distributed, but it's I think a really impressive way that the infrastructure people are working with First Nations communities to try and get them ready so that they can get the water structures they want. Also, what happens is that in certain communities, that one proper water plant will relieve it of 4, 5, 6 boil water advisories, because each of the pump houses is on a boil water advisory now. So with a decent plant and a distribution system, that you can get rid of 6 boil water advisories in one community. And so we're working on needs but also listening to the technical advisors in some of the regions that advise First Nations as to what's the best way forward and what are the ones with the greatest need.
Thank you. What is the current status of the Circuit Rider training program, given that First Nation Water and Wastewater Action Plan appears not to have been renewed or included?
It's been expanded, actually. We know that just building the plant doesn't work if nobody can run it. And also it means that the communities are now learning that they pick something that is workable, repairable, and that their people can be trained up to use, because they want jobs for their people. They don't want people having to come from other places. We're also working on remote monitoring systems that's in certain places that now electronically they can monitor the systems at a distance and then train the people how to fix what problem's been identified. So I think that there's really good work on the training, and you listen to one of those young men or women as a water plant operator. They're so proud. They can talk to you about E. coli or about emergency management. This is a pride of keeping their communities healthy, and we know that the training has to be there.
You mentioned the program has expanded. So how did you expand it? What direction did you guys go as far as expansion goes?
Paul, do you want?
Well, we're fleshing out the program.
We're fleshing out the program on emergency management, but also to support, as the minister said, the capacity for things like water and other things. But it's training for being able to be present on First Nations community to actually be able to provide the training, but on a rotational basis, if you so wish. We added $3 million, and if we need to add more, we're going to add more.
Okay. How much time I have left?
Minutes.
3 minutes.
Oh, sorry, we're in a 5-minute round. I beg your pardon. You've got 45 seconds.
Well, thank you. I preferred your first response. Okay, a quick one. What percentage of water treatment projects deal with upgrades versus total replacement?
Again, that is done case by case based on what the community needs, and there's certain, certainly, I guess it was in Neskantaga, or where you realize that this very old system's been patched up about as long as it can be, and so again, it's a matter of these conversations that in our regional offices have those conversations with the communities, and so the first one on my list here says repairs to leaks in water system, and so that's being fixed now, so it gets a hammer. There's Kitigan
Speaking of the hammer, Minister, I'm afraid we're out of time.
Expansions, that's under work. So again, it depends on which community, what the community knows it needs.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next question from Don Rusnak, please.
My time get eaten up?
No, you're good. 5 minutes.
Well, thank you for coming, Madam Minister. First Nations are very excited about this historic investment in infrastructure and historic investment in First Nation people and Indigenous people across the country. But First Nation people and Indigenous people don't want delays in their infrastructure projects. So we've talked about this before. When I've spoken to First Nation leaders and technical service people in my riding and across the country, they've expressed their concerns about dealing with infrastructure through the department. Can you elaborate on what's been done to alleviate some of those delays within the department with regards to infrastructure projects?
Yeah, I think what's happening is that we've come to understand that the regions know their communities really well, and that we can actually have moved much greater amounts of approvals into the region, where the regional office can just approve anything, what is it, at 10 million? Yeah. So each regional office can approve any project that's under $10 million, then they have to come to the center to just sort of figure out why that would be, and even that is frustrating sometimes for the things that are 11. But it is a. But I think that because there was such a large infusion in this budget, that there are many shovel-ready projects and renovations to things like housing that we're able, I think, to actually flow the money, and maybe Paul wants to explain.
And we're also, in terms of fast-tracking, trying to lift the approvals based on risk assessment of the projects, whereby notwithstanding the higher dollar values beyond 10 million, if the project is deemed less risky from a technological or financial or complex engineering perspective, the regions will have the authority to proceed further.
We also have bolstered engagement that we're doing to assess the priorities, and there will be elements that will be done at the regional level, and some that, primarily done at the regional level, but jointly with First Nation organizations.
Is that $10 million fast track, does that include all the technical services related to a project? Is that included in that amount?
Yes, it would.
I've been talking to Peter Collins, who has Chief Peter Collins at Fort William First Nation, who has a number of infrastructure priorities in his community, which borders the city of Thunder Bay. He expressed to me that a concern about the technical part of the projects, getting all the engineering, the environmental assessment work done. Is that going to be available for First Nations, or is it going to be flowing to another organization or like technical service organization?
Well, as the deputy said about technical organizations, that there's a lot of assistance that's now coming from the Committee at Chiefs of Ontario, and they're trying to help First Nations with the usual stuff. On the customized issues, then the regional office is able to provide the technical people. Sometimes it requires a feasibility study, sometimes, but I think we're you know, we are really trying to just get on with this stuff, and there were many frustrations as I went coast to coast to coast that they just thought they'd had this approved and somebody asked for another feasibility study or somebody asked for something else, and we're once we've got a plan, we want to be able to effect the plan.
1 minute, please.
The requested allocation in Budget 2016 is $255 million over 2 years to help support infrastructure programs from the department. What specific infrastructure projects are being funded under this allocation?
It's in your deck, I think.
Okay.
But the other infrastructure are things. Again, Mr. Chair, I can table the most current list that includes. I think we've almost got the Attawapiskat contaminated site on some of our lists now, meaning the things we hear about we add. But say there's on other infrastructure, it's things like connectivity to Nunatsiavut in Labrador. It's road repair at Tobic First Nation. It's Shashatchu road upgrade. So fiber optics. I mean, those are the kinds of things that go in the column under other.
Thank you, Minister. Next question from Arnold Viersen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister Bennett, for being here today. Appreciate the opportunity to ask you a few questions. I see in the estimates there that we've brought in a bunch of a lot more mental wellness teams that are being brought in. We're currently studying here, as you probably know, we're studying the suicide crisis or the state of suicide in Indigenous communities across the country. So it's probably something that I hope that you're following our study as well. I was just wondering if you could just talk about, I see you've increased the number of these mental wellness teams from 11 to 43. We've heard from different people that some of the professionals is difficult to come up with, even finding professionals to work on these committees. So I'm just wondering how is that going with finding people, and who are you finding?
It's a great question. As we met with the Attawapiskat, well, the NAN youth on Monday morning, it's quite shocking to realize that this young man at 23 years old has been a mental health worker for 4 years with no training. And so when a crisis breaks, it's very hard if the people who are there in a community really don't have the training. So the reason why the 4 mental health teams will be able to move into a crisis area as fully trained organizations, and then we will endeavor to get the mental health capacity built up in each of the communities, and with the 2 specific for Attawapiskat because of what they're going through right now.
Okay, because I guess you're definitely leading in the direction that I was looking, because they said it's very difficult to find appropriate people to work on these teams even. They said, Chief Isidore Day said that often it takes years just to build up that trust to even have the effort, the ability to do anything. So are these teams being made up of local people? I guess that's kind of the question. Or is that an avenue you're looking at to some degree, because he said like a lot often like spiritual leaders are the people that are doing these jobs anyways, and often without, as you mentioned, often without the training. Are these the people that you're looking to perhaps give the training and to build the team around, say, 3 or 4 individuals from the local area?
There's a couple of things that, so these sort of the teams that are mobile, they'll be set in regions and then we'll go in during a crisis, but we are learning a lot in, as you say, in terms of how we build capacity, but also how there's sometimes the issues, and we heard it from the kids, and we heard it certainly when we've been in some of these remote communities, that trust in speaking to somebody locally is not there, that they're worried about confidentiality, they're worried about telling their stories, and so sometimes having somebody come from outside feels safer to people. And I've been very interested in looking at Peggy Shaughnessy's program, Red Path, where they go in, but then they stay in touch online, and are able to stay in touch with people that they've made that primary relationship with. So we're exploring all of these. Obviously, it's in Dr. Philpott's department. My job is to make sure these kids have hope and are getting what they know they need in language and culture and land-based programs and housing, water, the things that the kids are really worried about, and the recreation centers that weren't previously on the agenda.
How many members are on one of these teams generally? Do you know?
1 minute, please.
That's being negotiated, but I think the moving teams, I think, are 4 people, but I would sort it out. But I think we can get it's in the backgrounder to the press release that came from Dr. Philpott.
Where are these 43 teams? Where are they going to be located?
So those 43 teams are actually in communities that have been deemed as high risk. So there's the 4 moving teams, and then the 43 teams will be in ramping up. There will be
from 11
a priority setting in terms of the people who really have been struggling and need it most.
Yeah, so it's those 43 teams that I'm talking about. What's the composition looking like? Is that going to be like 2 or 3 local people giving training? That
will be determined with the First Nation and what it looks like. But I think that that sometimes it's the great hockey coach or it's the great teacher or there are other people that we know in communities. We can build their mental health capacity so that they can do the most they can in terms of these kids, as opposed to being a health care problem. It's a creating health issue in terms of how we get these kids feeling good about themselves.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Next question from Gary Anandasangri, please.
Minister and your colleagues, thank you very much for joining us once again. I want to talk about child welfare. Last week we had Cindy Blackstock here, and she gave a very engaging presentation and we had a very candid conversation. So I'd like to get a sense from you in terms of your strategy towards child welfare and how we move forward.
Thanks for that question, in that it's something that has bothered me for a very long time, and I think even in my first set of remarks at the AFN, overhauling the child welfare system is what we have to do. As you know, we've got more kids in care now than at the height of residential schools. This has to stop. And if kids are not able to keep their language, culture, and personal cultural identity, they do badly in health choices, education, economic outcomes. So we are really interested in looking at a new way of doing this. We as a government don't see ourselves just as a funder anymore. We see ourselves as a provider, and that means working with the provinces and territories. I'm very pleased that Minister Duclos will have a summit with the social service ministers, I believe in September, where we'll have a conference that leads into the negotiations of how we overhaul this. In the meantime, we're working with Dr. Blackstock to stand up again the advisory committee that had 2 good reports that in terms of the changes that needed to be there, and in this first tranche, we've been able to provide the enhanced prevention dollars that allowed it to be in the provinces that didn't have that till now, and so it's we are going to make these changes, and particularly around the delivery of the services in a culturally based way.
And she's suggesting that the adequate amount of funding for that is about $200 million per annum. I know the way we're structuring it, we're backloading most of our resources towards it's backloaded. So, how do we gradually get to $200 million? And I think one of the frustrations that she expressed was this concept of incremental equality, which is a problematic notion. And so how do we get to a point where we do actually have equality of funding?
Absolutely, and we want to move to a system that really has a plan, and that is funded appropriately. In the meantime, I think we are worried about capacity in terms of what is there on the ground and how we can build that capacity in communities. But it is a matter of it's not only the money. It is about the capacity and about principles. Dr. Blackstock and I talk often about removing children from their families for poverty. Just seems absolutely wrong. They've got a nice project in North and South Dakota where you cannot remove a child for poverty. There's no food in the fridge. We should get some food in the fridge. Some of the values and principles around the rules of every kid has to have their own bedroom or their own cupboard, or there's not a fire extinguisher. I think for a lot of the families have felt these are just excuses to take the kid away, and that apprehension. Yet, everybody knows we've got to make changes, because the risk-averse way this is run now about, obviously you don't want to have a child that's been harmed at all. But going back to the basics of the best interest of the child has to include the cultural safety.
I'm going to ask you to put your doctor hat on, or professor hat on. We're hearing about the lack of Indigenous doctors and psychiatrists was the discussion we had last time. What do we need to do? How do we recruit? How do we make sure that we have people going through the system that will eventually, build that capacity that we're talking about? How do we get there?
Well, Gary, I think I've been worrying about this for all the time I've been here, but I think that organizations like the Indigenous Physicians Association have really ended up with MOUs with the AFN, that we have to get kids excited about that. I have to say that in the early days, all the bright and the best kids all wanted to be lawyers because of land claims, and we actually have to persuade them that being a doctor or an engineer or all of these other things is also exciting, and it is about making sure, firstly, we have to make sure these kids are finishing high school, but we need the role models in place, and I think we can do that with the kinds of virtual classrooms, exposing kids to great Indigenous doctors, great Indigenous nurse practitioners, social workers, even online, even if they don't have somebody in their home community. But, people like Dr. Evan Adams and Dr. Alika LaFontaine, I mean, these are amazing people. Marcy Anderson, Manitoba.
Thank you, Minister.
We're going to get there.
Thank you, Minister.
The final question is a 3-minute question from Charlie Angus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Minister. I want to follow up on my colleagues' questions regarding our testimony with Cindy Blackstock. She came for the supplemental A's because there wasn't any money for Jordan's principal. Will in the following supplementals, will we see money for Jordan's principal?
Absolutely. We are absolutely committed to broadening the definition of Jordan's principal and making sure this happens.
Because
there is going to be, we are going to honor what was in Jordan's principle that we all voted for. And it means the provinces and territories have to work together, and we make sure those kids get what they need. It is, as you know, in the present definition, not one case qualified.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable, and so we are very much taking to ourselves the broader definition in terms of children with need, not some funny formula that that make sure nobody qualifies.
Well, thank you, because, I mean, we're still seeing children being denied orthodontics at 99 and 100%. I mean, I know that's over in Health Canada, but if we don't see money in Jordan's principal, the denials are going to have to continue. I want to ask, in terms of the child welfare, the government's identified 121 million. Cindy Blackstock puts it at 200 million, but the government only has 71 million. So even in 5 years, the shortfall will still be higher than what the government's put as its minimum base. She says to our committee that the government is closer to being in contempt of Parliament than in compliance. So how do you get there if in 5 years you're still not going to be meeting the needs?
Well, I think, again, we are committed to changing the system and putting the reforms in place. We also know that right now we're paying other families to look after kids that are being taken from their families because of poverty. We have got to change this system, and we're gonna get this done. But it was really important to ramp up the money, and then we will get this done in terms of there will be the adequate money from between the provinces and territories to fund this adequately, but also to fund the healing for the mums so they can be back being mums again.
Great, sorry, I have to cut it. They only give me 3 minutes, so this guy's a tough guy. So my last question. So I just want to get this straight on the issue of the temporary investments, the money that's flowing. If you say the 2% cap is off on base funding, what have you identified as the escalator then to address all that base funding that right now is only at 2%? Is that in the budget for this year?
So, Charlie, again, the base funding piece is separate from the program funding.
I know.
The program funding used to be capped, and that's where we got into big problems on schools.
Base funding has been capped for 20 years. So, do you have an escalator?
No, the whole budget was capped.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the base funding, and do you have an escalator for it?
Program by program, I mean, I get on a lot of it, it'll be at 20% in
here, and this is what you gave me, so I'm going off.
We're over time here,
that's
Charlie,
all I'm
I'm afraid.
asking for. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
But Charlie, base funding is not how much money is flowing. It is the beginning, no less than 2%, and then we get to add on all this exciting dollars on program by program.
Okay, no,
very
thank
exciting.
you.
No,
We'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much.
It was there on everything.
Thank you. It's a sign of how compelling the subject matter is. Thank you for that. Thank you all for coming today and for sharing with us your information. It's very helpful for us, and thank you. It's over. We're gonna take a short suspend and come back into camera.
We'll be back.
Okay.
Everybody's getting along.
you.